Digital engineering is about connecting the present with the future, the digital world with the physical, connecting possibility with reality. Most of all, it's about bringing value to our clients. The projects we work on are exciting and will impact the future of Sydney for years to come, so getting the best outcome calls for working in a smarter way. We aim to have a partnership with our clients. It's not about building something and walking away. It's thinking about an end-to-end solution. What needs can we foresee, and how can we put in place a reliable process now that will keep adding value in future? GHD is pioneering workflows which we expect will become industry standards in future. Digital models are built and stored in the cloud for always-on access to teams around the globe. Workflows assign tasks to people, set deadlines, and track costs against a work breakdown structure. Multiple disciplines review a federated model at the same time, resulting in better projects that are coordinated, cost-effective, and developed with stakeholder investment in mind. The transparency this offers our clients is extremely powerful in fostering trust and communication. Taking a measure twice, cut once approach saves millions across planning and construction. Changes to a digital model are faster and provide a better coordinated design for our clients. Data and project priorities are thus what drive decision-making. Ultimately, technology is just an enabler for the inspiration that comes from people, and it's the fresh thinking of our staff that we want to support. We want to unlock notions of what's possible and challenge the expectations of what's an acceptable standard. It's a great way for young people starting out in their careers to contribute because the model shows you what will be in lifelike detail. In the same way, it connects clients dynamically with their future project because they can see and interact with it in real time.
Untitled Geophysical Consultants, providing expert advice for geophysical and geotechnical exploration carried out in the mining, metal sector of the materials market and energy market. Provide a wide range of geophysical and geotechnical services to environmental groundwater and engineering industries. Long-term experience in base metal exploration, porphyry gold, and copper exploration, geophysical data processing, and modeling services. We have a wealth of international survey experience over the past 2 decades. Over 28 countries in some of the most remote and challenging environments. Our services: geophysical project design, field acquisition, field supervision, processing and modeling, data interpretation, induced polarization surveys, transient electromagnetic surveys, ground magnetic surveys, unmanned aerial vehicle magnetic service, downhole surveys, radiometric surveys, resistivity surveys, seismic surveys. Offsite geophysical consultants.
Good afternoon, everyone, including PMC and PMEA members and our marketing partners. Welcome to the 6th in our new EMCEE series of webinars. My name is Roger Dimmel, and I hope that you all have an enjoyable and informative time with us today. Just before we get going, I would like to mention and thank our valued marketing partners, for without these companies' assistance, this webinar would not be possible. Our supporting partners are Intertech, Hexagon, Utatech, Major Drilling, Drill Corp, Index, Ollie Consulting, First Metro Securities, and Resource Comms. Our foundation partners are Weir Minerals. Weir Minerals delivers end-to-end solutions for all mining, transportation, milling, processing, and waste management activities. David Brown, Santa Solo. David Brown Gear Systems, Philippines, Inc., suppliers of industrial gear products and aftermarket maintenance services to the Philippine mining industry. SiteWork Ready. SiteWork Ready offers international recruitment and workforce solutions to companies in the mining and processing, oil and gas, and construction industries. Our principal partners are OSTI Geophysical Consultants, advice and guidance for geophysical exploration programs being carried out in the mining and metal sector, as well as the coal sector. OSTI Geophysical Consultants also provide a wide range of services to the environmental, groundwater, and engineering industries. QED, Quest Exploration Drilling, Asia's leading exploration drilling company. Modern equipment with well-trained staff has elevated QED to become the benchmark for international standard drilling operations in terrain that is generally typified by logistical constraints, geological complexity, and topographical extremes. GHD. GHD has had a permanent presence in the Philippines since 1998, with over 600 professional staff spread across 3 cities in the Philippines. Their main office in Makati and 2 branches now in Cebu City and Quezon City. Focused on creating lasting community benefit, GHD leverages on its connected global network of 10,000 employees to provide engineering and environmental management services to key players in the energy and resource sectors. Our industry partners are TBI Resource Development, Agatha Nickel, Oceana Gold. We thank them for their ongoing support. We are also affiliated with the Melbourne Mining Club, ANSCHAM, the Australian and New Zealand Chamber of Commerce, PMEA, the Philippine Mining and Exploration Association, COMP, the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines, EMCEE, the Philippine Mine Safety and Environmental Association, and Yaman Philippines. Our media partner is the Philippine Resource and Construction Journal. Our regular MC, Leo Dominguez, is not available today, but we are fortunate to have Mr. Joey Ayson, President of PMEA, as our MC in his stead. Joey is a graduate of BS Geology from UP Diliman, trained under MGB, UNDP for 4 years, worked in Indonesia for 10 years, worked for Oceana Limited and eventually Royalco Philippines until 2015. He currently does consulting work for a number of companies, exploration management, tenement management, government liaison, etc. He is a competent person for geology. Currently, Joey is the president of the Philippine Mining and Exploration Association, which prior to COVID-19 restrictions holds a monthly members event at the Corinthian Plaza in Makati. These will commence again as soon as it's safe to do so. Joey is also the current chair of the UP Geology Alumni Association. Ladies and gentlemen, I will now hand you over to our MC, Joey Ayson.
Okay, thank you, Roger, for that kind introduction. Am I loud and clear? Okay. Before we get going, I'd like to offer the Philippine Mining Club's congratulations to our media partner, the Philippine Resources and Construction Journal, on their 10th anniversary. May our fruitful partnership continue for many years to come. Issue number 4 is now out, and the link is on your screen at www.philippineresources.com latest issue. Now, before we proceed to our speakers, a few guidelines for this webinar. As a courtesy to speakers and to avoid unnecessary noise in the background, may we ask everyone to put their mics on mute and cameras off. You can turn them back on at the end of the program for the photo ops. We will be issuing certificates of attendance to all attendees. You can request a copy from Ms. John Falcotella, and the contact details are on your screen. For your questions addressed to our speaker or panelist, you can type them in the chat box. Audience can use the chat box or either the Q&A. I will then read them out to our speaker after his presentation during the Q&A. We will hold the Q&A after the speaker has made his presentation. Okay, now we've dispensed with the webinar rules. And before we get to our regular stock market update, I have been allowed by the organizers to have a few industry updates. So, as with COVID-19, the MGB has allowed the realignment of the unused SDMP funds for typhoon assistance. The Presidential Mineral Industry Environment Award, or the PMIA, will push through with the 2020 awards, although the evaluation will be virtual and also with the validation. As I understand, the deadline for submission of entries and endorsement from the MGB regional offices is first week of January 2021, and the awarding is targeted at the first week of March 2021. Many of you have probably heard of the new Memorandum Circular 2020-10 from the MGB on the mining production capacity threshold. So, and its relation to the ECC. I think the way I read it is that it is just a clarification on the economic geology provision mentioned in the EIA under Dow 2003-30, which is under the EMP, should be the same as the final exploration report, which is a mandatory requirement for the acceptance of a DMPF study by the MGB. So it's probably just a guide for miners and regulators like EMB and MGB, so that one does not need to submit two reports, one to the MGB and one to the EMB. So it's just probably a clarificatory guidelines. I've also been advised that the Silangan renewal has already been approved by the DNR Secretary. I think it's supposed to end in 2024, but they have now made the application earlier than that, so they've been extended beyond that. Here's the good news. Oceana Gold has been instructed by the Office of the President that they will now undergo a renegotiation of their FTA after the application for an expansion of the Bukalot County has been denied. So I think this negotiation will start next week as per order of the Office of the President. And I mentioned before that there were 36 priority projects that has just been approved, and 31 of those are now into the construction development stage, although more than half are in the non-metallics and aggregates and dredging business and the expansion of whole seam. And the other 5 will probably go on stream in 2021 pending submission of minor documents. So I guess that's just in the industry update for now. And let us now go to our stock market update. Let me introduce Mr. Sandy Gilles for the stock market update. Sandy is a financial analyst working to educate clients of the stockbroker firm First Metro Securities. He used to teach finance in college for undergraduates and for masters of business administration students. Ladies and gentlemen, I now present to you our stock market speaker, Sandy Gilles. Sandy?
Yeah, thank you. I will now give you a few tips on what are good items to invest in so that our money can grow. So during this stock watch, I'll just take 8 minutes to talk to you about our mining stocks, vaccine-related stocks, and what happens if Joe Biden gets sworn in. Then appendix about the Philippine and US stock market. So first of all, we have 7 good mining and oil stocks in our stock market index. I estimate you will need to shell out 18,078 pesos to be able to buy a minimum order of all of these 7 stocks. So if you have 18,078. Why don't you get one of these stocks each for every one of your children, for example, because they will be moving up over the next many years. The biggest one that we have is Nickel Asia with a market value of 62 billion pesos, followed by Semirara Mining and Power, then PXP Energy and Philex Mining. These are the relative sizes in market value in billion pesos. Allow me to present their prospects one by one, starting with Nickel Asia, because they have good news that their net income went up 20% for the 9 months to September. 20% is good. And I think that from the current price of 4.55, they are facing an upswing over the next cycle. I speculate that maybe their share price could be moving up again beyond 5 pesos, maybe reaching up to 9 over the coming years. So it's now at 4.55. I also have good, I have news about Semirara. Unfortunately, it's bad news. Their income went down 64%. And then that's why the share price has been going down. But I think that it is already as low as it can be. And I think from here on, if their fortunes change and they start having better sales, better exports, then conceivably the share price could be climbing back up over the next few years. So that might be the trajectory for Semirara Coal Corporation. Meanwhile, PXP Energy is going to be working hard in drilling and exploration. So I'm thinking that for the next few years, we will continue this big spike that happened in the last month when the share price went from 6 pesos to 12. So that's just the beginning. I think that the share price still has a way to go over the next few years, possibly from 9 pesos per share to climb up again to 18 pesos per share, which it was before. And then for Global Ferronickel, you have some good and bad news. They have business for the future, but they had a bigger loss in the past year. So I'm thinking that their future will still be sideways for the time being, but I'm hoping that next year that they will be able to recover and start picking up again. If business continues to be difficult, then they will not follow the green line, but maybe the red line, something like that. If business continues to be difficult for them, let's hope for the best. Meanwhile, Apex Mining has very good news. Record high 991 million in income for the first 9 months to September. I recommend that you buy some Apex Mining. It's now 1.79 pesos. It used to be 7. It might go back to 7. So between now and 7, you better buy some of the shares. That's what I recommend. And then, so those are the mining stocks. And then another hot topic is who will produce the best vaccine that will cure 90% or 86% or 94% of the subjects. One of the contenders is Abbott Laboratories with 32 billion in sales per year. They actually sell COVID-19 tests, the testing equipment and the formula. And they are now selling more and more of the Binax Now COVID-19 test. So it's now around $107 per share. It's come up a lot already from $40 per share. I think the next step will be to target $150 per share over the coming years. That's Abbott Labs. They also make many other things for heart and glucose monitoring. And then you have Moderna, the second contender, sales of 200 million in 2016, and then 60 million last year, and it's hoping to go back to 200 million in sales eventually. So they are developing a coronavirus vaccine, which can be stored at ordinary refrigerated temperatures. Doesn't have to be super way below 0. It might be easier to transport. So if this sells very well, then their share price is now $98. Who knows, it might go all the way above $100 per share. So they could be making in billions of dollars in sales for their coronavirus vaccine. November 2020. For Novavax, they are looking forward to achieve a milestone soon for their coronavirus vaccine as well. So it's now at a very low price of $20. but sorry, $95, wrong number, sorry. And then it's hoping to move up again to $220. Pardon the typo, it's $95 currently. And then very quickly, what happens if Biden gets sworn in as president? There's 5 different stocks that stockbrokers believe will fare very well if he gets sworn in January. And one of them is the company called Square, SQ, at $212 currently. It used to be 10, it went all the way up to 50 and 212. What does the future hold? They're very good in cashless payments. So it's possible that they will be doing very well the next few years. Their sales is currently running at $5 billion per year. The next one would be a company called Fastly, which is all about cloud computing, keeping your software on the internet and running it from there. And it's now at $84 per share and slowly creeping up. It's got good prospects. The third one is the social media platform, which has found a way to go into e-commerce. So therefore, their sales is now running at $1.14 billion a year. So they're now heavily into e-commerce, not just the happy pictures. So if their share price is now at 70, so pardon, it's actually 70, but it's probably on its way up over the next few years because they're in prime position. Next is a company called Vertex Pharmaceuticals, which is a biotechnology firm. And they also sell plenty of specialty medicines for various specialty illnesses and diseases. Now $222 per share, but steadily moving up. It used to be $5 per share, so it's come up a great deal. Their sales is $5.3 billion a year. Finally, Okta is all about cybersecurity. Share price is now $245 per share. Used to be 20, so it's come up a great deal over the last 2 years. And I'm thinking that it has still a ways to go in the coming years. So get your shares of Okta, OKTA, all about cybersecurity. Lastly, there's another last one. This one is all about real estate for farms. They rent out their farms for people who make medical marijuana. So apparently they have all the permits and it's completely legal. And they're now at the share price of $148 per share, up from $20. Imagine that. So I think they're on a trajectory upwards also. They just rent out farms. Appendix, last 3 items. How is gold? It's now at $1,840 per ounce. It touched a high of $2,075. And if you had invested in gold since 4 years ago, then from $1,000, it's now at $1,840. That means that the investment went up 15% per year. Quite good, isn't it? Now, lastly, okay, final appendix. How are the stock markets in the Philippines and the USA? Well, in the US, they've completely recovered from the dip due to coronavirus. They're at 3,666 points on that S&P index of the top 500 stocks. So 4 years ago, it was 2,000 points. Now we're at 3,666. And it's charging higher. Week after week, they have new highs. I think that this top 500 stocks in the US, they've gone up 13% per year for the past 5 years. So that's pretty good. That's way better than banks or bonds. And our Philippine stock market is currently at 7,100 and slowing down, but it's come up a great deal from 15 years ago when it was at 1,000 points. And I'm looking at the future. If the economy gets back to 6%, maybe 8% growth over the next 10 years, then you might see this type of performance of our Philippine stock market because we have great domestic demand, and that's what's driving the economy. Okay, so this we have our stock market has produced 12% a year, up from 1,000 of 2003, 12% a year for the past 17 years. I think it's a good investment, 12% a year, running 12% a year. These are the top 30 companies. So finally, if you want to learn more about stock trading locally, dial this number or email customer service or visit the website. And then you can therefore put at least 20,000 pesos in play and then watch it grow over the years. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Back to you, Roger, Joey.
Okay, thank you, Sandy, for that very informative stock market update. Not sure I'm surprised about marijuana farms being rented. I don't know how that will fare in the Philippines. But for those of you guys who wants to buy Apex shares, you can always contact Sandy, and he will be more than happy to help you.
Sure.
Okay, now let's go to our main speaker for today. I've met him since he was with TVI, but his talk is really very timely as the industry has been plagued by negative comments very recently, and allow me to give him a proper introduction. Our speaker has over 30 years of experience in corporate communications. He was previously connected with 3 of Asia's most admired companies: San Miguel Corporation, Jollibee Foods, Ayala Land, before moving into the mining sector. So San Miguel, so that's all 4 B's for you: beer, burgers, buildings, and bullions. He was initially connected with TVI, as I said earlier, and then he joined the Chamber of Mines, Intex, Mark Ventures, all as BP for communications. In 2018, he returned to the Chamber of Mines to reassume his old post and to wear a new hat, that of being the National Coordinator for Towards Sustainable Mining, or TSM. He is also the founding president of the Coalition for Responsible Mining in Mindanao. You've all heard of Cormin too, and of the Mimaropa Mines for Real Progress, MM4RP. He attended the Management Development Program with honors at the Asian Institute of Management and is a recipient of the Outstanding Business Administration Graduate Award from the University of Santo Tomas. Ladies and gentlemen, to speak on the topic towards sustainable mining beyond compliance, please welcome Mr. Rocky DImaculangan, Vice President for Communications and National Coordinator for Towards Sustainable Mining, Chamber of Mines of the Philippines. Rocky?
Hi, thank you. Now, how do I turn on my, hold on. Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to share with you our journey towards sustainable mining. We in the mining industry want to get it right. The Towards Sustainable Mining initiative will help us achieve that. TSM is the commitment of all the members of the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines to demonstrate performance to our critical stakeholders on an annual basis. It is important for our members to go beyond the word of the law and say that leadership is an important part of the way we operate. Our journey actually began 2 years before we signed up for TSM. In 2015, still under the previous administration, all large-scale mining companies were required to obtain ISO 14001 certification. Our members were all able to achieve that. In 2016, shortly after he assumed office, President Duterte said he doesn't mind mining as it can contribute to the country's economic growth. He had one condition though: mining should follow stringent global standards, particularly that of Canada and Australia, as you know, 2 of the leading mining jurisdictions in the world. One of our member firms, Philex, came across TSM in 2017 and recommended its adoption by the Chamber of Mines. The Chamber saw the beauty in TSM and reached out to the Mining Association of Canada later that year. What is so beautiful about TSM, you may ask? TSM is a set of tools and indicators to drive environmental and social performance and ensure that key mining risks are managed responsibly at members' facilities. The program was established in 2004 by the Mining Association of Canada, and its main objective is to enable mining companies to meet society's needs for minerals, metals, and energy products in the most socially, economically, and environmentally responsible way. TSM's core strengths lie in the fact that it is performance-driven. It fosters accountability, it promotes transparency, and it possesses credibility, with a 15-year track record as a reliable environment and social governance standard under the guidance of a multi-sector community of interest advisory panel, which I will discuss in detail shortly. Canada's partner countries in TSM are Argentina, Botswana, Finland, the Philippines, Spain, and the latest one just this year, Brazil. The Philippines is the first and so far the only country in Asia that has adopted TSM. Other countries that have expressed interest in TSM are South Africa, Indonesia, Peru, Chile, Laos, and Australia. We just had a meeting with the international partners of TSM the other night. And I don't know if I should say it here, but Australia will adopt TSM very soon. One of the things that TSM does is lay out a set of expectations that everyone will be judged against, a higher level of standards. These expectations come in the form of tools to manage risks, measure results, and foster progress in two key areas: communities and people. These protocols are about working with people and communities in providing sustainable as well as safe and healthy working environments and environmental stewardship. These protocols provide further guidance on minimizing our environmental impact. We adopted from the Mining Association of Canada 7 of their 8 performance areas or protocols, which addresses some of the critical risks or key issues that mining companies need to care about. It may interest you to know that the Prevention of Child and Forced Labor Protocol will cover not just our members, but their suppliers as well. During the Philippinization of these protocols, it was recommended by the Tailings Management Review Team to defer the implementation of this protocol in the light of the tailings dam accident in Brazil last year. In response to that accident, the International Council on Mining and Metals recently announced a new global standard on tailings management. We are working closely with MAC and other partner countries in aligning TSM with a global tailings standard. These 5 protocols are assessed on a 5-point scale: C, B, A, AA, and AAA, with AAA representing leadership and best practices, and A representing good practices. Meanwhile, under these 2 protocols, a mining project could only pass or fail. Either the project achieves the indicators and criteria under these protocols, or they do not. Now let me discuss the regular cycle of the TSM layers of verification, which follows a 3-year cycle. Every year, member companies will ask each of their mining projects to self-assess against a set of protocols or measuring sticks. And so these mining projects will grade themselves, and then they submit that information to COMP. COMP publishes the reports so that all of the reports from the mining projects are publicly available. Every 3 years, to validate or calibrate the assessment, a company will undergo external verification, where you have qualified verifiers come on site and double-check or validate the assessments. In the year when a COMP member company undergoes external verification, the CEO or an authorized officer of the company will provide a letter of assurance confirming that the verification was conducted. And then, for companies that were verified in a particular year, a subset is invited by the Community of Interest Advisory Panel to come before them and to discuss their TSM results and respond to a series of questions. In the experience of members of the Mining Association of Canada, this has proven to be tremendously valuable to them because they get to really engage and find out what issues are of concern and interest to the advisory panel members and the backgrounds they bring to the table. The COI panel is an independent multi-stakeholder group comprised of 15 individuals from such sectors as labor, environment, civil society, academe, finance, law, indigenous peoples, and church, among others. Select members of the Comp Board also sit on the panel to provide mining industry perspective to discussions. I will introduce you to the members of our COI panel in a bit. We know that TSM is yet another imposition on us. The Philippines already has among the strictest mining laws, rules, and regulations in the world that impose on exploration and mining companies many social, economic, and environmental limitations and conditions. Where we can explore and mine is already well defined. We need to secure a social license before we can explore and mine. We have to contend with an alphabet soup of environmental requirements and reports from inception to termination and beyond of our mining projects. Who we should hire, how much we should spend to protect the environment and to develop our host and neighboring communities are spelled out. And we have to be closely monitored by multi-stakeholder groups from these communities on a regular basis. In the last 8 years, government has done a thorough review of the regulatory framework of the mining industry and has put in place additional rules and regulations to enhance the industry's productivity while increasing the protection for the environment and the benefits to host communities. These include limitations on areas that may be disturbed for nickel mines, temporary revegetation, the MGB scorecard, mandatory participation in the extractive industries transparency initiative, and as I mentioned in my opening slide, the ISO 14001 certification. And yet here comes a new one, TSM. So let me address the question, what's in it for me? Or more appropriately, what's in it for mining? According to Canadian Ambassador to the Philippines, His Excellency Peter MacArthur, TSM has, over the last 15 years, helped to transform how mines in Canada manage the environmental and social aspects of their operations. For example, in areas related to how mines work with local and indigenous communities, when TSM undertook its first third-party verifications in 2006, only about 50% could meet or exceed the good practice level of performance, or level A. Today, over 90% of mines using TSM have met or exceeded the minimal required level. The fact that our panelists are well respected in the sectors they come from add further credibility to both TSM and participating companies. Also, investors are increasingly looking at how to measure the environmental and social performance of miners and are turning to standards like TSM. In fact, Sustainalytics, a major environmental and social ratings agency, recently developed a new tailings indicator that leans heavily on TSM. The only way a miner can receive the top level performance in the Sustainalytics indicator is through TSM. Beyond performance on the ground, TSM is increasingly playing a role in supply chains with global brands such as Apple by recognizing TSM in their supplier responsibility standard. TSM is also working with a new standard called Responsible Steel that will enable miners that supply the steel industry to gain recognition and preferred market access to steel companies that participate in the standard. And so on December 19, 2017, the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines forged a mutual cooperation and licensing agreement with the Mining Association of Canada to adopt TSM. The ceremony was attended by no less than the Canadian Ambassador, DNR Secretary Royce Matu, as well as by top officials of MAC and the Chamber of Mines, as well as heads of chamber member companies. We've gone a long way since we signed up for TSM. I don't want to bore you with the details of our progress, but I'd like you to note the red letter dates in this slide and the next. These dates have to do with a long TSM Philippinization process, making sure that TSM and its components are responsive to conditions in these islands. We will take a close look at this Philippinization process in a bit. One of the highlights, by the way, of our progress is that we were able to gather the members or the panelists of the COI advisory panel last year during Mining Philippines 2019. And I'd like to introduce them to you one by one. Representing the academe is Dr. Ronald Mendoza. He's the Dean of the Ateneo School of Government. He is a senior fellow of the East-West Institute and a former executive director of the AIM Policy Center. Everybody here, of course, knows Michelle Omagno. She's from the academe and active NGO proponent. She's an assistant professor at the UP School of Economics and as CSO representative also in the International Board of EITI. And she's more known to us as a board member and secretary of Bantay Kita. We also have Professor C.P. David for the environment sector. He is a professor of geology at the UP National Institute of Geological Science and a member and of the panel of experts of the Climate Change Commission. We have a priest in our midst in the person of Father Jerome Marquez. He is a provincial superior of the Society of Divine Word and a canon lawyer and a director of the Arnold Janssen Mission Foundation. Of course, you know Ms. Lucy Cruz Valdez. She's the head of the News and Information section of TV5. She's formerly known as the co-host of the legendary Probe team. And she's an awardee for excellence in journalism by the Titus Brandsma Awards from the Catholic Mass Media Awards. Then we have the National Executive Vice President and National Executive Board Director, Attorney Gerard Seno, representing the labor sector, or TUCP. Again, most of you here know former Assistant Secretary Edwin Domingo. He was also the assistant, he was an OIC director of MGB once, and former Assistant Secretary for Foreign Assisted Projects of the DNR. For the legal sector is Attorney Jose Mejia. He's a senior partner of the Ligon Solis Mejia Florendo law firm and a regular member of the Judicial and Bar Council. For the environment, again, and forestry sector, Ms. Lisel Liton Relieta. She is a VP and project director of Gaia South and an active member of the Foresters League of the Philippines and the Society of Filipino Foresters. Then we have Mr. Alexis Benjamin Zaragoza for finance. He's a partner of the SGV and a graduate of the University of Chicago Booth School of Business with MBA honors. Then we have Governor Alfrancis Bichara of Albay and the NCIP Executive Director, Rogelio Bantayan. Well, these two advisors have excused themselves from the panel, and looking for their replacements will be one of the advisory group's top agendas in 2021. Also sitting in the advisory panel on an official basis are our chairman, Mr. Gerard Brimo. He's the chairman of Nickel Asia Corporation, whom Sandy mentioned a while ago is doing very well. Of course, Mr. Jules Austin, he's the president of Philex Mining, and Ms. Gloria Tan Climaco, she's the chairperson of Filminera. We had envisioned a three-step Philippinization process for TSM. The preliminary revisions were conducted in 2018, and these revisions were led by officers and functional experts from the 7 member companies that you see in this slide. TVI and Oceana Gold are major sponsors of the Philippine Mining Club. We also have Lepanto, Filminera, Atlas, Philex, and Nickel Asia. We did our further revisions by expanding the setup of the review team in May 2019 rather, and the expanded setup included several other companies, including we included Atlas, CTP, PGMC. Also, COMP participated in the Crisis Management and Communications Planning Protocol. Then we conducted in August 2019 a workshop by TSM initiative leaders. We had 60 company representatives or TSM initiative leaders in that workshop. There we categorized further the 7 protocols into to 3 categories: non-technical, technical 1, and technical 2. These TSM initiative leaders will be the ones who will be implementing TSM in their respective companies. After that workshop, we felt that we had to do another review and arrived at a consensus on issues raised during the workshop. Among them is the impact of the MGB scorecard on the TSM grading system. Now here's a summary of the revisions we made during the 4-step process. We incorporated applicable Philippine laws and regulatory processes. We applied Philippine terms. For instance, we don't use the term facility level community of interest. We just changed it simply to stakeholders. Of course, the Canadians referred to their IPs as Aborigines and First Nations. And then we provided more detailed discussion on standards, compliance with the law, added objective measurements, and a major revision here is the inclusion of the Social Development and Management Plan or program. As you know, the Philippines is the only country in the world that mandates mining companies to allocate a portion of their operating costs to social development. This was not included in the Canadian version of the IP and Community Outreach Protocol. So confident with the revisions, our review leaders presented the product of the 4 revisions to the COI panel again last February 19, just before the lockdown. The COI panel noted that TSM is heavily process-oriented and recommended that where applicable, outcomes or results of the process should be included or should be considered in the indicators under each protocol. We consulted MAC on this, and they pointed out that outcomes or outputs are not something that can be compared between mines and between companies. How much tailings or water the mine discharges or how many community projects or agreements are in place varies from mine to mine. And the context around the local situation is critical in understanding whether those outputs are appropriate or not. What is comparable and easy to subject to a benchmark such as TSM is whether a process meets certain established levels of quality. So that is where our focus is. Many of the standards, however, have reporting or performance indicators associated with them that require the mines to establish objectives and targets and undertake public reporting. This is included to ensure that there are outcomes or outputs associated with each protocol. For example, in biodiversity, one of the indicators instructs the site to establish targets or objectives for significant aspects of biodiversity, and then another indicator asks the mine to publicly report on biodiversity performance. Nevertheless, the TSM review leaders revisited the protocols, and apart from revising the Biodiversity and Conservation Management Protocol, 2 others were also revised to reflect outcomes in the indicators. These are the IP and Community Engagement Protocol and the Water Management Protocol. This 5th revision have been submitted. A revision has been submitted to the COI panel, and it seems they have no comment anymore because they did not revert any further. And so in August and September this year, we were able to roll out TSM. It was participated in by the Canadian Ambassador, His Excellency Peter MacArthur, the DNR Assistant Secretary Nitz Kagiwa, MGB Director Wilfredo Moncano, and 14 MGB regional directors. A total of over 200 representatives from comp member firms participated in the rollouts. So what do we do from 2021 onwards? Of course, we will have to revisit the tailings management protocol through a technical working group that we've already constituted, and revise, if necessary, this protocol to reflect the tailings global tailings standards put out by ICMM. We estimate this to be completed around March or April next year. Earlier, I presented this slide to you, the regular cycle of the layers of verification of TSM. From 2021 to 24, we will implement a slightly modified verification system. This system considers the limitations presented by the ongoing pandemic and ensures a smooth transition to the regular TSM cycle that I pointed out in the previous slide. Next year, our members will do gap analysis and come up with programs to address those gaps. Reporting will only be voluntary at first, and there will be no public reporting. And also next year, we will begin to look for qualified external verifiers for approval by the COI panel. In 2022, reporting will already be mandatory for the self-assessment results, and this will be submitted to the comp and the COI panel. Then the identified and approved external verifiers will undergo training with the assistance of MAC. In 2023 and 2024, we will divide our operating mines. So just external verifiers will just audit 50% of the companies in 2023, and the other half will do a self-assessment. And then in 2024, the other half will do external verification. As in the regular cycle, external verification will be supported by CO letters of assurance. All reports, whether self-assessed or externally verified, will have to be reported and submitted to the comp and the COI panel. All results will be made available to the public, and random COI panel company reviews of verified companies will happen. Those who have been assessed by external verifiers in 2023 will proceed with the regular cycle the following year. So goes with the other 50%. Now, let me end this presentation by quoting our chairman, Mr. Gerard Brimo, during Mining Philippines last year. He said that our reputation as an industry has suffered tremendously by the attacks that we've gone through in the fairly recent past. It will take some time and a concerted effort of the industry to prove that it operates responsibly and that communicates its accomplishments. To my mind, that means not just mere compliance, but going beyond. Let us prove to all and sundry that this is a resilient industry that won't go away, that we indeed operate responsibly and go beyond mere compliance. We live in a world of much heightened environmental concerns, knowledge, awareness, heightened levels of its citizens' engagement. People care about issues and they expect more from companies. This is our way of demonstrating that we are committed to acting responsibly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rocky, for that very timely talk. We all know that the industry is beleaguered as of this time, and we'll now go to the Q&A, but let me remind some guidelines first. Panelists can type their questions in the chat box. Audience can either use the chat box or the Q&A, and I will read them out to the speaker. So let me just start with something, Rocky. I was listening to your talk intently, and it's been almost 3 years, no? In December 2017 that we rolled out TSM.
Mm.
And with COVID-19 now, so when do you think can we really have some companies start doing the voluntary reporting so that we know that TSM would work in the Philippines?
As I mentioned in the slide, the mandatory reporting will be done in 2022. But let me point out the main characteristics of the review process. No, it's really, we purposively did it in a way that it is repetitive, so that we are assured that we are thorough enough and that all bases are covered without watering down the TSM protocols. And second, it is participative. It was participative. We really intended to do that so that the companies, so that the program will have the ownership and buy-in of those participants. So you will expect our member companies to do their mandatory reporting beginning 2022.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. This is really a voluntary move on the chamber. No? We know we have so many regulations, ISO certification, PHCITI, all those are mandated, but TSM is something voluntary, which we congratulate the chamber for introducing. There's a question from Logan of Malaysia. Okay, salamat siyang Logan. What is the definition of sustainable mining as used in the Philippines as opposed to using, say, sustainable mineral development? Rocky?
Well, mineral development and mining, to my mind, is two sides of the same coin. Sustainable, the word sustainable, based on the United Nations definition, is maximizing the use of present resources to benefit both current and future generations. In this case, the current and future generations of Filipinos, without, without exhausting all those resources. And when we talk about resources, it's not just we're talking not just about the environment, but also the other resources in the community. We talk about people, we talk about the community, so forth and so on. I always use this example. Somebody asked me once, how can you do sustainable mining when minerals can be exhausted? I point out that because of mining, you are able to tap into the other resource. You are provided with means through these mining projects to tap into the other resources of the community. One of which, through social development projects, providing education for the less fortunate in the countryside. Whenever you have, whenever you bring somebody or put into a scholarship program a member of a family, you enable that family, you provide more opportunities for that family to have upward mobility in the future. If one of them graduates, one member of the of that family graduates, that family will have an additional means to provide for the other members of the family in the future. So it's not just environment here when we talk about sustainable mining.
Okay, thank you, Rocky. I hope that answers your question, Logan. Right. So mining is just probably just a tool to help all of us. No, it's not. We know that minerals are finite, so mining would just really be a tool, as I said. Okay, here's one from let me see, from Fatih Chad. How do you enforce TSM? Are there any penalties for non-compliance?
Okay, I prepared for that question. Hold on. Let me look at my cheat sheet. As we mentioned a while ago, no, TSM is mandatory to all Chamber of Mines of the Philippines member companies. And these are limited to operating mines. As such, our membership commitment requires members to report and assure their TSM performance and show some continuous improvement annually until they reach level A in the 5 protocols or pass into others. Following the lead of the Mining Association of Canada, we will establish a corrective multi-step action process in place for members that do not meet the commitment. The process will seek to bring errant members back to conformance. This includes, number one, engaging with TSM initiative leaders and offering support and working through their concerns. There be escalating the case to our TSM committee chair, who happens to be Mr. Gilles Austin, who will speak with a member firm's head or comp board representative, and then to our board chair, Mr. Brimo, engaging with the firm's head or board representative on a peer-to-peer basis. And number three, if none of these works, our board chair and TSM committee chair will make a recommendation to our board to invite the member to come into conformance or leave the chamber. In the experience of MAC, it has used a similar process 3 times in the last 15 years, 3 times only in the last 15 years. In the first case, MAC was able to work through their issues and get it resolved. In the second, the case was escalated and the MAC CEO escalated to the MAC CEO and it was resolved. In the last one, the member was asked to leave the association and did so.
Okay.
So I hope that answers it.
Thank you, Rocky. So you came well prepared, huh? So you anticipated that question.
Yeah.
Okay, another one from Maureen Simeon of the Philippine Star. The government has been touting mining as a contributor for economic recovery amid the pandemic. How does the industry view this, given the still lack of policy changes, EO 79 and open pit ban? Has there been any meeting or dialogue with the government to move forward with this? Okay, thank you.
As you know,
Our chairman also talked about it, huh? Is it Gerard Primo?
yes, as you know, Mao, hi Mao. We've already, as you know, we've made already several representations to government, and the government has made several pronouncements in the recent past in the light of the COVID pandemic. And as far as we know, they are looking into the policy issues that we've been raising in these representations, and hopefully we get word from our policymakers in the near future. They're looking seriously into mining.
Okay, I think that's all we could do. I think the industry has done all it can do to present our side and back with facts and figures, and it's really up to the regulators and the government to do those policy changes.
May I add, I think one of the things that you mentioned, Joey, during your industry update, that government will start renegotiations with OceanaGold. It's a good sign.
Yeah, that's a really good sign. And rather than we be in limbo and do nothing, and I think we're moving forward. And the Bukalot Cantic expansion has been denied by the NCIP, so it's also a step in the right direction. So we might see the DPO mine contributing substantially in next year.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that in the last PHEITI presentation that they had a big contribution for Region 2 in 2018. So another question, here's one from Kevin. How do you get the message to the public so that they really understand what TSM and what it means to all parties?
Initially, the audience for TSM, especially in the first years of implementation, will essentially be our member companies. No? Then when this ball gets rolling, we will get to see the good news stories coming out from the improvements in their environmental and social performance. All of the assessment systems of TSM are evidence-based, and the immediate community especially will feel TSM because of the increased engagement that they will witness once our member companies get to implement TSM.
Okay, thank you, Rocky. I think that's really one thing that that we can also really work on, getting our message across so that more people are aware of what TSM is and what the industry is all about. So here's one from Minerva Chaloping. This TSM should be disseminated to the LGU, and local government officials are elected individuals, and they have the authority to represent their communities, not any other individuals such as leaders of NGOs. Do you intend to disseminate this to LGUs?
Well, we already have a multi-partite monitoring team at the project level. What we have in the COI panel is in the National Community of Interest Advisory Panel are representatives from various sectors of our society, a macrocosm of the stakeholders of the mining industry. I believe we should also hear from what the NGOs have to say. And this program will lose its credibility if we shut out any of the stakeholders that upon whom our operations have an impact on.
Okay, thank you, Rocky. Here's one from the Malaysian Chamber of Mines, Theo Laihok. What is the government's role in TSM? How does TSM apply in mineral exploration and overall mineral resource development planning for the country as a whole?
Well, when a company achieves level A, that means that the company has complied with all government regulatory and rules and regulations required by law. So in a way, and also probably through the MGB scorecard, no? But there are two assessment systems here, no? One is the regulatory framework, and the other one is TSM, which the target of TSM is beyond compliance. So government does not have a direct hand in it, but we can consult government in some areas going forward.
Okay, thank you, Rocky. So as Rocky had mentioned earlier, this is a voluntary move on the chamber, and it's not imposed on it. But despite all the efforts and added costs to companies, we are doing it, and we are going beyond compliance. So we should be happy that we are initiating this and beyond what the government is mandating.
So let me add to that, Joey. So that this will not be an added cost to companies, we've already asked, actually, Mr. Brimo has written a letter to Director Moncano to allow us to charge a certain portion of our DMTG funds towards funding TSM. And from what we heard, the response is positive. We're just awaiting for the answer. So this won't be additional cost for member companies.
Yeah, thank you, Rocky. Here's one from Jonathan Mayuga of Business Mirror. How will TSM measure the gains of mining companies, individually or collectively, as members of the Chamber of Mines, in terms of implementing progressive rehabilitation of mine-out areas? Is there a scheme in the TSM where a mining company is required to do reforestation or river cleanups?
Jonathan, with or without TSM, mining companies are already mandated to do reforestation, progressive rehabilitation. After a few years of operation, it's already required to set aside the final mine rehabilitation and decommissioning plan. And funds are already deposited to a bank to ensure that even if the mining company stops operation, there is a fund that can be used for rehabilitation. So TSM does not have anything to do with rehabilitation. What TSM does is to make sure that the processes are followed to the letter and even goes beyond what the law requires.
Okay, here's a comment from an anonymous attendee. This is quite contentious. In terms of sustainability, what will be the role of small-scale miners? We're sad to say they don't have the necessary budget to do their operation sustainably. Small-scale miners.
TSM is only confined to the operating mines of members of the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines. We've often said that small-scale mining has a role to play in our society because it provides employment, it provides income to our the smaller miners all over the country. It can contribute more to our economy and to the development of the country if most of them fall within the ambit of regulation, so that they will be able to have stricter social environmental programs to follow, so that they'll be able to pay taxes, so forth and so on. TSM.
Rocky,
Yes.
Rocky, can I?
So,
This is an interesting topic. Because this is something that TSM members in Canada don't face. And many mining companies have small-scale miners in their area, which of course would impact on the environmental aspects. So, I mean, I would think that TSM would probably have to take into consideration at some time in the future those mining companies that have influences from small-scale miners, for example, that may affect their environmental results.
yeah,
it's
maybe
an
as part of the
interesting
Philippinization of the TSM.
Yes, I agree. Probably there are several protocols that tackle the environment under TSM, and in my mind, a company can only do well in some of this in these protocols if they also, because they also have to consider the impact of the small-scale miners to the surrounding communities. But they'll have to do this, of course, with the help of both the DNR, the MGB, and the local government units.
I think also, Roger, that mining companies are supposed to police their own areas, and how to deal also with the small-scale miners go hand in hand with this. And of course, we need the help of the MGB, DNR on that. You know what happened in Ronrono,
of course,
so they had to
yeah, I know, but
small-scale
it's just a
miners.
thought that it would impact their certainly their environmental scores. I know from my experience in Nalas Beacon, it would have.
Okay.
Can I just interject one thing, Rocky? As you know, I've been pushing for a number of years for results-based and evidence-based SDMP planning. How will the TSM bring SDMP beyond compliance? I noticed that you have included it.
Oh, yes.
But how do you propose to bring it beyond compliance?
As you know, with SDMP, you have sort of a critical performance areas, right? But when you talk about achieving goals under TSM, you will have to have an external party to validate if your goals are achieved. Apart from the external verifiers, if I recall it correctly, some of the protocols will require an external social development expert to validate if your projects are promoting sustainable development in a specific community. And these have measurements, and these have to be evidence-based. For if that as outside or external expert says or can attest that your projects promote sustainable development, then you get a AA or AAA rating.
Well, let just me add something, because SDMP has already been institutionalized, and you have to spend 75% on DHNC, development of host and neighboring communities, 10% on development of mining technology and geosciences, another 15% on IEC. So you're confined within that as of now. So maybe
I think for social development, some points will be added if a company, if I remember it correctly. I can't memorize all the protocols because they're so voluminous. If I remember it correctly, some points will be given to those companies that will undertake CSR. No? These are expenditures outside the SDMP.
yes, separate from the yes, separate. Okay, which brings us to a question from Mon Santos. Who will give the final rating? Will this be the result of self-assessment and independent auditors?
Well,
How do you get the verifiers? How do you?
it's two step. It's two step. No, Mon, how are you? It's a two-step process. No, your self-assessment. Of course, you grade yourself, and then we have a qualified external verifier who evaluates your self-assessment. Sometimes, in the experience of the Mining Association of Canada, your self-assessment grading is downgraded, or sometimes it's upgraded. So during the year of external verification, it's the external verifier's assessment that is followed.
Well, there's a same follow-up question from an anonymous attendee. Will the localized or adapted version of TSM be available publicly? If so, when? And will COMP also be releasing a set of qualifications for verifiers? So
yes, we will
verifiers.
For your first question, I think that we can make the protocols publicly available. We'll see to it that it can be downloaded from the Chamber website. Next year, we will begin our search for external verifiers. We're looking at 4 to 6, if I remember it correctly. And we have several people in mind already, but we have to validate with them.
Okay, here's one from Marcel Villegas. Will TSM initiative include strategies on how to address or counter the attacks of anti-mining groups through the use of social media or other means? So she's from Philippine Resources Journal.
Sorry, what's the question again?
Will TSM initiative include strategies on how to address or counter the attacks of anti-mining groups through the use of social media or other means?
Good news stories, whether it's within TSM or not, have to be made known to the public. As I mentioned earlier, once this program gets rolling, we expect the good news stories to come in. This will be done notwithstanding the attacks from non-government organizations.
Here's one again from Fatih Chan. What is the smallest size of a mine that needs to adopt TSM? I don't think there's a the size of a mine would really to adopt a TSM. I think it should be all mines.
Again, TSM, in the Philippine context, TSM is limited to the operating members of the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines. And the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines is composed of the biggest large-scale metallic mining companies in the country. There are definitions for large-scale and there are definitions for small-scale.
Okay, I think it's a follow-up from Jonathan Mayuga. Given the recent impact of Typhoon Ulysses, wherein mining, quarrying, and illegal logging are being blamed for the environmental degradation of watersheds and the massive flood in Luzon last month, how will the TSM measure the gains of mining companies individually or collectively as members of COMP in terms of implementing progressive rehabilitation of mined-out areas or areas beyond their mining tenements? Is there a scheme in the TSM where a mining company is required to do reforestation or river cleanups beyond mere compliance?
Again, Jonathan, with or without TSM, mining companies are already planting trees. I don't know if you're aware that for every tree that is felled to give way to mining, mining companies are required to plant 100 trees. And I have here a data from the MGB. As of May 2020, the mining industry has planted 37 million seedlings in over 29,000 hectares. Now, the survival rate is nearly 22%, or 34 million trees. So, as far as the large-scale mining industry is concerned, we have not been remiss in planting trees.
Okay, I think the industry has done more than its share in planting trees, so
Imagine
just getting our message across.
Yes, imagine, Joey, you're familiar with this. We are probably second to the government. Probably the mining industry is the second biggest reforester in our country. 37 million seedlings with 34 million trees surviving. That's a very high survival rate, 92%.
Yeah, Rocky, I think I remember we had a ceremony at the Parks and Wildlife many years ago, and that was the 20th million tree.
Yes.
Oh, yes, yeah, and that was already a few years ago, no?
Yes, now we're at 37 million.
Any other questions? Let me see.
Rocky,
Roger, can you see any other questions?
Yes, I have one. We are planning a bamboo summit for mining companies in the new year. What role do you see in the context of biodiversity and the government requirements for replanting the mined out areas? What role do you see of bamboo in the whole scheme of things?
We view bamboo as a welcome species, in the reforestation of mined out areas. It can provide huge environmental benefits, as it is a renewable resource. It absorbs greenhouse gases. It is fast growing. It enriches and protects the soil, and it's a species that's highly adaptable. This grass species offers opportunities for job generation, and it's a good substitute for wood in many applications, such as paper furniture, building materials. And mined out areas can be planted with bamboo in cooperation with host mining communities as a potential livelihood source on a sustainable basis after the life of mine. In our mind, however, to maintain biodiversity, other plant and tree species should be planted as well as part of a comprehensive mine rehabilitation plan.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. Well, we look forward to working with COMP in our planning.
Keep in touch, Roger.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. What else? I'm not seeing any other questions. So, Rocky, one of your slides mentioned that we're the only country in Asia that adopts TSM. I mean,
yes, still, but we won't be, if what I gather the other night is true, we won't be alone anymore in Asia. We will be doing TSM alongside Australia, Asia, and Oceania. So far, as we speak, the Philippines is the only TSM country in Asia.
I'm not seeing any other questions here. Roger, from your end, anything?
Well, I mean, I don't want to interrupt any other questions, but just in your response earlier, Rocky, when somebody asked, well, you know, how can it be sustainable when all the minerals are gone? I think there's a very good quote from the ICMM, which is the International Council on Mining and Metals, Sustainable Development Toolkit. It says in part, thus, community sustainability can be supported by mining practices that help convert one local asset, non-renewable natural resource capital, into another local asset, sustainable human and social capital. And I think that's supports what you were saying, is that mining gives the opportunity to educate, to build healthier lives, to build social capital within the community and the skills for them to move on. I mean, if you look at some of the great mining cities of Canada, Sudbury, for example, and it still is a mining city, but it's gone way beyond there. It's a research center. It's a some of the old nickel mines now are being used to store very valuable seeds, etc., to maintain biodiversity if there are major catastrophes. So there's some interesting things happening. Thompson, Manitoba is another case. So I think, and especially now in the COVID situation, this is what the rural community needs. This is why Oceania needs to open up again. You can imagine 1,500 jobs will be given back immediately. This is why it's so important to do King, to do Tampakan, to do Silangan. Those, as Jerry Brimo very well said, you know, this would add a considerable percentage to the Philippine gross national product, employment, and exports.
And if I may add, as you know, Roger, oftentimes when a mining company goes to a far-flung rural area and it needs technical or jobs that require skills, you know, many of the companies do apprenticeship programs, you know, that train local residents. Mining companies or mining projects may not be able to provide lifetime employment, but a mining project enables a community to gain lifetime employability because of the skills they learn from a mining project, you know, like operating a bulldozer or being an electrician. You know, these skills in many instances weren't there when the project started operating. So apart from education, you get lifetime employability, among other things.
Hey, thank you for that. I think about 5 minutes to go, and before we wrap up, may I ask Rocky to give a few closing remarks before I wrap everything up?
That's all I have to say. And I'd like to thank the organizers and sponsors of the Philippine Mining Club for inviting the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines to talk about TSM in this afternoon's edition of the Philippine Mining Club meetings. Thank you very much for having us.
Okay, thank you, Rocky. I hope that a lot of people are now realize that TSM is gonna work and it's gonna proceed, and we hope that this is really going beyond compliance.
Thank you.
So anyway, our next mining luncheon webinar is on December 11 on Friday, and it's one you don't want to miss. The subjects on clean mining, non-toxic alternative to cyanide and mercury in gold processing. The speaker will be Mr. Kevin Fell, the co-founder and group CEO of Clean Earth Technologies, a global ESG technology provider. So I hope to see you again on December 11. And to all attendees, we will be issuing a certificate of attendance and you can request one from Miss John Falcotella for a copy. Again, congratulations to Philippine Resources Journal on their 10th anniversary. Issue 4 is now out, and the link on your screen is at www.philippineresources.com, latest issue. Also, watch out for the next PMC and PICC webinars in the new year, and just log in to our websites for further updates. Thank you all for being here today and for your continued support to the Philippine Mining Club. So everyone, kindly